Hey guys, it's Lucky Ghost here, and today we're going to be talking about the Solo Magicka Dragonknight. This build is going to be fantastic for both solo and group content. In order to use it in group content, we're only going to have to make a couple of very small changes to a couple of abilities and take off the Ring of the Bell order. Aside from that, you're basically using a group build to solo, and it does it incredibly well. The theme of the Magicka Dragonknight is fire. Lots of fire. And area of effect fire. It's got passives that enhance its fire abilities and enhance the damage of the AoE abilities. So let's go ahead and talk about what makes this build tick, how to put it together, including your race, your mundus, your attributes, consumables, your gear, skills, and your rotation. And of course, we'll touch on the new champion points because ZOS did update the champion points once again, so we'll need to change them from last patch. As for the race, you can't go wrong with a High Elf, Khajiit, or Dark Elf. All three of these are going to parse almost identically. On the other hand, the Magicka Dragonknight is notorious for having sustain issues. So if you want, Breton is a fantastic choice, not only because of the increased sustain, but also Breton has some built-in passives that reduce the incoming damage they take, which is perfect for solo. So if you're going to be doing a lot of soloing, Breton is amazing. It's really going to counteract the lack of synergies that you have while you're soloing, and it's going to give you some great damage resistances. As for the mundus, you can take either Thief for increased crit chance or Shadow for more crit damage. With this current setup, I'm going to go ahead and take Thief for the increased crit chance. As for our attributes, we're going to put all 64 points into Magicka, and as for our consumables, we're going to use Witchmother's Potent Brew while we're soloing, or Ghastly Eyeball if you don't want the extra health or you're in a group. Both of these foods are going to give you incredible sustain because they both give you Magicka back every second, but when I'm soloing more difficult content, the extra health you get from Witchmother's Potent Brew can come in handy. As for our potions, feel free to use Essence of Magicka potions whenever you're doing something easy. This will save you a ton of money, or whenever you're doing something difficult such as veteran content, be sure to slot something like Essence of Spell Power, which is going to grant you major sorcery, increasing your spell damage by 20% and giving you major prophecy. One of our abilities is going to give us major prophecy, but that's only while we're on the front bar, so every time we swap to the back bar, we lose that buff. So this potion makes sure that you have that buff 100% of the time, and it's an important buff. But what about the gear? As for the gear, this build is really convenient for solo players. There's no gear on this build that you can't get by yourself. We're going to be using One Piece Slime Craw for the increased crit chance. This is the single largest crit chance bonus from any One Piece item in the game. We're also going to be using the 5-piece burning spell we've set on the jewelry, the shoulder, and the front bar weapon. For the body pieces, we're going to use Mother's Sorrow because it gives more crit chance than any other set in the game. Also, we're going to be using the Ring of the Bell order, which is getting a buff with Blackwood. It's going to go up to 20% of your damage dealt coming back to you as health, and it's going to remove the cap on the amount of health you can get back per attack. So the Ring of the Bell order is already a really fun item, and it's about to become even more amazing. On the back bar, we're going to use the tried and true Maelstrom Inferno staff. This staff buffs your light attacks. So because you're light attacking between every single ability, that is a massive boost to your damage. And when you jump into a group, all you have to do is take off the Ring of the Bell order, put a Burning Spellweave ring right here, and then wear a 2-piece monster set of your choice. Zaan's is fantastic for single target damage. You could always go with Illambris, which is going to do AoE fire damage, or you can go for Ice Heart, which is a nice defensive set that puts a shield around you on occasion and does some frost damage. The Zaan's is going to bring the most single target damage, Illambris is going to bring great AoE damage, and the Ice Heart set is going to be your defensive setup. Usually you only use Ice Heart when you're soloing, so in the event that you can't get the Ring of the Bell order, go ahead and wear 2-piece Ice Heart instead. As for the abilities, the first ability we're going to use is Flames of Oblivion. This ability is going to do damage every 5 seconds, so make sure you don't recast this early. Let it fall all the way off so that it can do its damage all 3 times. It does damage every 5 seconds for 15 seconds. While slotted, this gives you major prophecy like we were talking about earlier, so when you're running the cheap potions, you still get this buff anytime you're on the front bar. However, when you do swap to the back bar, you are going to lose that buff. The second ability on the front bar is Molten Whip. Lash an enemy dealing flame damage. While slotted, whenever you activate a different Ardent Flame ability, you gain a stack of Seething Fury, which increases the damage of your next Molten Whip by 33% and your weapon and spell damage by 75 for 5 seconds. This effect can stack up to 3 times. Because of this, we're going to load our front bar with Ardent Flame abilities. As you can see here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 Ardent Flame abilities. 3 of these are here, not only because they do great damage and they're pretty handy abilities, but also because they're going to buff our Molten Whip. The next ability on the front bar is Engulfing Flames. This is going to do conal AoE fire damage in front of you. It's a nice dot. It also causes affected enemies to take more damage from all flame damage attacks based on your offensive stats. with a maximum of 10% bonus damage taken. We're currently getting 9% bonus damage out of that passive. So Engulfing Flames is essentially increasing our damage by 9 or 10% while we're in battle. For all of our flame abilities, we're doing a ton of fire damage, so that will be a lot of abilities. All right, the next ability is Burning Embers. This is a dual purpose ability. It puts a very nice dot on the enemy, but it also heals you for 75% of the total damage inflicted when the effect ends. So what that means is when this dot expires, it heals you for 75% of the damage. That's a huge heal when it comes in. Or if your health is low, you can use it again early to force the heal to come early. So you can cast this ability back to back for a nice heal. The next ability is Inner Light. This is a bar buffer. You won't use it, but it is giving you an incredible buff to your front bar. While slotted, your max magicka is increased by 5%. And just as a reminder, max magicka increases your damage because your spell damage is in part based on the size of your magicka pool. The more magicka you have, the more spell damage you have. These two are linked together. Every 1,000 or so magicka gives you about 100 spell damage. Next, Shooting Star. Shooting Star is a bar buffer as well. You can use this in a pinch if you want to. However, most times you're going to be better off using your back bar ultimate. This is a Mage's Guild ability, so there's a Mage's Guild passive that increases your max mag when this ability is slotted and increases your magicka recovery when this ability is slotted. Any Mage's Guild ability for that matter, so we've got 2 of them slotted, which means we're getting that passive times 2. That passive is called Magicka Controller. Increase your max magicka and magicka recovery by 2% for each Mage's Guild ability slotted. Current bonus 4%, so we get 4% max mag and 4% mag recovery because of these 2 abilities. On the back bar, we're going to be using Unstable Wall of Fire as our first ability. This is going to be proccing our Maelstrom Staff, which means our light attacks are going to do more damage to anybody standing in this wall. It's also a very nice dot, and it causes burning enemies to take 20% more damage from this ability. Well, pretty much everything we attack is going to be burning because we are a Magicka DK. The next ability is Barb Trap. You can replace Barb Trap with Channeled Acceleration if you'd like an ability that gives you minor force that costs mag instead of stam. Typically, you're going to want to take Barb Trap because it costs stamina instead of magicka, which means it's great for your sustain. However, Channeled Acceleration does have some nice perks. It does cause you to move faster for 12 seconds after you cast it, 30% faster in fact, and the minor force lasts twice as long. It's going to last 36 seconds instead of 18. However, the downside of Channeled Acceleration is it's got a long cast time, leaving you quite vulnerable anytime you have to cast it, and it can really mess with your rotation. The next ability on the back bar is Harness Magicka. Harness Magicka is a fantastic shield that pretty much every mag DPS is going to use from time to time. It's essential when soloing. It puts a shield around you, but also when you take damage, you're going to get some of the magic you spend on this ability back, which is great for your sustain. Volatile Armor is going to be the 4th ability on the back bar. This ability does 2 important things for us. One, it puts a nice dot on all the enemies around us, but it's also going to be our source of major resolve, increasing our physical and spell resistance by 6,000 for 20 seconds. So anytime you know you're going to have a lot of damage coming in, make sure that this ability is up. That's going to help to mitigate a lot of that incoming damage, with the bonus of also being a great dot. In a group, you can take this ability off and replace it with Eruption, which is going to be a nice AoE dot for you to add to your arsenal. The final ability on the back bar is Elemental Drain. Elemental Drain does 2 things for us. It's going to put Major Breach on the enemy, causing them to take a lot more damage from us, and it's going to apply Minor Magic Steal to them, causing us to get magicka back every time we attack that enemy. This ability is essential for your damage and your sustain while soloing. In a group setting, the healer is going to have this ability slotted, and they'll be casting it on the enemies for you. So you can take this off and put another dot, such as Scalding Rune. This is a fire dot, which means it's buffed by some of our Dragonknight passives that cause AoE fire abilities to do more damage. And then as for our back bar ultimate, we're going to use Standard of Might. Standard of Might does a few things. It's going to put a nice dot on the floor, but more importantly, it's going to cause us to do 15% more damage to everything inside of that circle, and it's going to cause us to take 15% less damage from everything inside of that circle. That buff and debuff combined are perfect for solo content when you're fighting a big bad boss. It does cost a whopping 250 ultimate, so be sure to save it for the big fights. If you want an ultimate that's more bursty, feel free to use something like Fiery Rage from the Destro staff line. Fiery Rage won't provide as much damage to your parse, but it will be easier for new players to put out consistent damage with. Alright, let's talk about our passives. I'm going to go over each one and why we're going to grab that passive. Feel free to refer to the written guide if you just want to look at the list and spec them in yourself. I'll link the written guide in the description down below. The first passive we're going to get is Combustion, which is going to increase our damage of our burning and poison status effects by 50%. So the fire theme begins right away with the Magicka Dragonknight, and when you apply burning to an enemy, you restore 500 magicka, and when you apply poison to an enemy, you restore 500 stamina. And typically as a Magicka Dragonknight, you're not going to worry about the poison and the stamina. You're going to be more concerned with burning, which you're going to be doing constantly. So you will be getting that 500 Magicka constantly. However, in a pinch, if you're running out of stamina in a battle, you can put a poison on your front bar weapon to proc this 500 stamina recovery. It will overwrite your fiery enchant that's on the front bar, but for the fight where you need the stamina, it can be pretty useful. Warmth is going to slow our enemies when we hit them with an Ardent Flame ability. Searing Heat is going to increase the damage over time of our Fiery Breath, Searing Strike, and Dragonknight standard abilities. Basically, a ton of the skills in this line are doing 33% more damage, and their duration is increased by 4 seconds. Because of this passive, very important for increasing your damage. World of Ruin is going to cause our AoE flame attacks to do 6% more damage. Next, in the Draconic line, we're going to take Iron Skin. It's going to increase the amount of damage we block by 10%. That's a nice gimme. Burning Heart is going to make it so that while a Draconic power ability is active, our healing received is increased by 12%. Elden Dragon is going to make it so that our health recovery is increased by 5% for each ability slotted, and it's going to make it so that our melee abilities have an extra 2-meter reach on them. This comes in handy more often than you would think. Finally, we're going to grab Scaled Armor, which is going to increase our spell resistance by 3,300. That's a really nice free bonus damage mitigation that we get there. In our Earthen Heart line, we're going to take Eternal Mountain. This is going to increase the duration of these abilities by 20%, which is great when we're using Eruption. We're going to take Battle Roar, which is going to cause us to restore 46 health, Magicka, and stamina for each point of our ultimate cost. This is a major part of our sustain as a Dragon Knight. So your ultimate is part of how you sustain. It's going to be basically like a tripod. So for instance, if you use your Standard of Might, which costs 250 ultimate, that's going to give you over 11,000 of all 3 resources back. It's going to be a huge heal and a huge hit to both your Magicka and stamina pools. It's going to be great for them. Next, we've got Mountain's Blessing. When you cast an Earthen Heart ability, you and your group gain Minor Brutality for 20 seconds, increasing your weapon damage by 10%. This isn't very useful for our Magicka DK because we do not use weapon damage. We're using spell damage. However, the next line, if you're in combat, you also generate 3 ultimate. This effect can occur once every 6 seconds. That's very useful for us. Helping Hands, when you cast a non-stamina costing Earthen Heart ability, you restore 990 stamina. So every time we cast Eruption, we're going to get stamina back. So if you're in a fight like the Leaping Torrent in Vateshran Hallows, if you slot Eruption, that's going to be great for your sustain. You can cast this ability anytime you need more stamina back. So on that fight, feel free to replace your Volatile Armor with Eruption. Next up, we've got our Destruction Staff passives. We're going to take all of those because they're going to increase our damage and our sustain. Then we've got our Light Armor passives. Again, we're going to take all of these because it's going to increase our damage, our penetration, and our sustain. In the Mages Guild, we're going to take the bottom 4 passives because we are going to be slotting at least 2 of these abilities and sometimes a third. These are going to cause us to do more damage, improve our sustain, and increase their duration. In the Sigic order, if you're going to use Channeled Acceleration, make sure you grab Clairvoyance, Concentrated Barrier, and Deliberation. In the Assault skill line, you've got to grab Continuous Attack. This is going to increase your move speed by 30% anytime you're on a mount. You only have to get to Assault level 3, which is really easy to do. You don't even have to PvP for it. Just go to Cyrodiil and do the beginning of the zone story. Do not put a second point into this if you're a PvEer though, because the second point does nothing for you. It's not going to make you go even faster. It's just going to do some PvP stuff. Next, we're going to grab all of the Breton passives. And then finally in Alchemy, we're going to max out Medicinal Use. This is going to make your potions last as long as the cooldown, which is going to give you 100% uptime on those incredible Essence of Spell Power buffs, the 20% increased spell damage, and the increased critical chance. Alright, as for our rotation, we're going to debuff the enemy with Elemental Drain. This won't pull aggro and it doesn't cost any resources. You can then pre-buff yourself with Volatile Armor, and what I often like to do as I'm closing the gap with the enemy is I'll go ahead and pre-buff with a Harness Magicka. This is going to give me some time to get my dots ticking. The second we have all of our dots ticking, we're unkillable because the Ring of the Pale Order is bringing life back in every second for each dot that's ticking on the enemy. So you'll find yourself to be most vulnerable in the opening of an attack. When you're running up to the enemy, you're trying to get all your dots down and he starts attacking you before they're ticking. That's when you're going to feel vulnerable. So leading with a Harness of Magicka, put that shield on you, which is going to protect you while you get those dots ticking on the back bar, and then start getting your front bar dots ticking, is going to make you feel a lot safer at the beginning of battles. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to go Elemental Drain, Volatile Armor, Harness Magicka, Barbed Trap, Wall of Elements. Then we're going to put Flames of Oblivion, Engulfing Flames, and Burning Embers. After this, you're going to have 3 stacks of the buff that the Molten Whip gets. So we're going to proc it. Your character's going to do a nice little 360 backhand slap with a whip, signifying that you successfully accrued 3 stacks before hitting him, which means you just did a ton of damage. At this point, what you're going to do is continue to cast Molten Whip until any of your dots or buffs are falling off. Once one of those falls off, just go back and replace it, and then go back to whipping. Whip it good. Whenever your ultimate is up, go ahead and use it during a big battle. Remember, this thing takes a long time to come back, so feel free to save it for the bosses. All right, next up, let's talk about champion points. CP System 2.0 was modified yet again for Blackwood. The primary reason for this modification was to make it easier for you to reach max power. So before, on the initial version of this CP system, you had to get to CP 2100, 2200 to reach max power. They've reined that in and made it so that you now reach max power closer to 1650, taking a ton of time off of the grind to kind of get closer to your max power. And in doing so, they also added a healer line, which we're not really going to talk about because we're not a healer. They modified the number of points you can put into a lot of these passives. So we're going to be adjusting our CP investment this patch. So I'll talk about that here now. One of the interesting changes they made to the champion points was that they made it a lot cheaper to max out preparation, right? This now only costs 20 points and it gives us more damage reduction than it used to. So for half the price, we're getting more damage reduction. So I think it's going to definitely be worth it to grab this one earlier than we used to because it's so easy to get, and 10% damage reduction is massive. If you feel like your character is too squishy, feel free to deviate from the order I suggest and pick this up sooner than later. This is going to greatly help you stay alive if that's something you're struggling with. With that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and take the route that optimizes damage first. So if we want to go for damage first and worry about our tankiness later, we're going to go ahead and put 20 points into precision, 50 points into fighting finesse. This is a slottable, so be sure to slot it or else it's not doing anything for you. Then we're going to go into the elbow here. We're going to put 20 points into piercing. Then we're going to back out. We're going to put 50 points into deadly aim, 50 points into thaumaturge, and 50 points into biting aura. And these 3 are also slottables, so make sure you slot these. Again, if you don't slot them and you don't hit the confirm button at the end of slotting them, they're not doing anything for you. So make sure that you don't forget to confirm when you're done applying all of this stuff. Then we're going to go ahead and put 40 points into Eldritch Insights, which is going to unlock the chest here. And we're going to put 10 points into Quick Recovery so that we can unlock Preparation. This is going to increase our damage mitigation by 10%. So we're going to put 20 points into that. Then we're going to back out of this and we're going to go back into the elbow. We're going to put 20 points into Flawless Ritual. Then we're going to put 30 points into War Mage. Then we're going to top off Flawless Ritual with another 20 points. Then we're going to back out of this. We're going to go back into the chest. We're going to put points into Elemental Aegis and 20 points into Hardy. Once again, don't forget to hit confirm. And as always, I'm going to have the written guide linked in the description below. We'll have this all written out for you, just in case that's easier for you to follow when it comes to champion points or any part of this build. We'll have the written guide linked down there in the description below. All right, as for the red CB tree, we're going to start with Boundless Vitality and put 50 points in. We're going to put 50 points into Rejuvenation. These are both slottables. Make sure you slot them so that they are doing something for your character. Then we're going to put 15 points into Tumbling, 10 points into Mystic Tenacity, 40 points into Hero's Vigor, and 50 points into Siphoning Spells. Siphoning Spells is slottable, so slot it. Then we're going to go back here and put 50 points into Ironclad, our last slottable. So now all of our slottables are slotted in the red tree. Then we're going to go back and top off Tumbling, put 40 points into Defiance, put 8 points into Hasty, 40 points into Tireless Guardian, points into Fortification, top off the rest of Hasty, put 20 points into Sprinter, and for the rest of the champion points, refer to the written guide in the description below. And as for the green CP tree, well, there's no real min-maxing. It depends what you're doing. If you're doing a lot of thieving, then you're going to grab the nodes here to the left. If you're going to be doing fishing, you're going to grab these ones here on the right. And if you're opening chests and picking up nodes, you're going to grab these ones in the middle here. It just kind of depends what you're doing, and then you'll go ahead and invest in that category. It's fairly inexpensive to switch nodes, so feel free to change whichever ones you're slotting and have fun with this. This is a section that is not meant to be min-max. They intentionally did not put power in here. They wanted you to be able to pick things that were fun without feeling like you were giving up power by doing so. So look into these, see which ones look the most fun to you. If you're curious which ones I tend to pick, I'll go ahead and put that in the guide linked in the description below. And that's it, guys. That's all there is to the Magicka Dragonknight. It's a fun class that focuses on a ton of AoE fire damage. If you lean into that, you'll find that it works out really well for you. Once all of your dots are ticking on an enemy, you become nearly unkillable and you can face tank most bosses. This build is exceptional in both Vateshran Hallows and veteran Maelstrom Arena. If you found this video helpful, be sure to like and subscribe so that YouTube knows to show it to other people. Also, you'll get alerted to more ESO content when I post it. If you ever want to hang out with someone else who loves ESO, be sure to swing by my Twitch stream over at twitch.tv/luckyghost. And finally, I'd like to thank my YouTube members for supporting the channel by becoming members. To find out how to become a member of this channel and what the perks are, click the join button below. I hope you have a fantastic day, night, or evening wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next video.